My Michelle Live podcast.
My Michelle Live. My Michelle Live. Sports Time Out. The fans, the field, the faith, the fun. Here's Michelle.
Yeah, I am, and I am not alone. I'm here with the boys, and we're ready to sports it up. These are some of my favorite people on the planet. They bless me in ways, and they bless me in sports. And today we're going to be taking on sports with a twist of faith. We look for the God story, because there always is one. Let me introduce you to the team we have with us. Brent. You have a soundbite, Brent, believe it or not.
Photographer Brent R. Baker.
And we have with us Garrick Pang.
Get ready to get...
And then, of course, the one and only Dell, did we? Of course, Dell has an outstanding book that has to do with sports and faith. He has quite a few of them, so you can find links at mymichellelive.com. Fellas, it's good to talk with you. So let me explain if you're new, and boy, has our audience blossomed in the last few months. So for those of you who are new, each one of us has our own sports favorite. We have our own sport that we really, and others, we'll take it or leave it. But there are always issues that go beyond the pitch, the court, the field, that are pertinent to everyone, even if you're new to the game. Hey guys, happy Friday.
Happy Friday
to you and to our one.
Hello, wonderful audience. Wonderful audience.
Blossoming.
Or flowering.
So, guys, right off the bat, I did want to talk about hockey season. We're into the Stanley Cup playoffs. Brent, if you're watching, Brent has a nice hockey rink in the background. And I had the privilege of a couple of weeks ago, Del, you didn't hear about this, but Garrick went to his first NHL game ever.
Oh, really?
And you
it
liked
was awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, we talked about it last week about how much different an in-person hockey game is to a TV hockey game. It was amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, and there's been some really fun things going on. There's been, like, the Maple Leafs had a big bounce back in their series against Florida, and man, that's been something else. Fans had pitchforks out for one of the refs, and this is because this comes to play in just about every sport. Ref that gets a bad rep with a team that just seems to do some bad calls against a team, seems to be uneven. How does that happen, and why do they keep letting them ref for games for that, for those teams?
Sometimes it's nothing. I think often it's nothing nefarious.
It seems that way.
It feels that way. I remember in my sports writing days, there was a family that they had 3 sons. I think they were like Adam, Aaron, and another A name. And I don't know what it was, but it was like, I was really good about separating brothers and sisters and all this in my sports coverage. That family, for some reason, I could not get it right. It was like every other week I get a call from the mom about, I got son number 2 mixed up with son number 3. And thankfully she was really nice about it. She's like, yeah, it was my fault for naming them all with A's at the start. But it was like, and I'd get it in my head. It was like, oh no, it's them again. And I'd be really careful about writing it up. And then somehow I would still blow it. So I think some of that, like, psychology can come into play even with as professionals, whether it be the players or even the ref. It's like, oh boy, this guy again.
Yep.
And it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
No, I totally agree, Brent. We have referees. So I play men's league soccer, and we have a couple players who, when we get to the game, they're like, oh no, that ref, he hates me. And sure enough, and there will be a tackle that will happen, and he'll get a yellow card, and then it'll pick up again from there, and then so the player will be after the ref, and then the ref will be back, and then it's okay. You're just feeding the narrative, right? And so, yeah, it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think sometimes they just reschedule them just so that they can maybe redeem themselves, perhaps. But then
And
the
sometimes you
the
actually get
challenge-
some actual dislike too,
and the challenge as a fan is that you see anything that seems out of whack, and then you jump all over it.
Okay,
And-
but sometimes we do see refs that just make these crazy bad calls. And you might say it's self-fulfilling prophecy, whatever. But I see this a lot in soccer where they seem to make these stupid redeeming calls. It's that nothing happened there. And maybe he feels bad about the bad call he just made. You can't do that. It doesn't work that way. Is it just me? But I see that a lot. Del, what do you say in this regard?
I see that a lot too, and everybody sees it. And as much as they want to say it, there are some bias that goes in from officials, and it's just the way that's part of the game. And you can pinpoint it, and it's not coincidence that the same guy or gal has made a bad call on this same team 5 years in a row, or whatever. It does happen. You go back, and it's not holding a grudge. And in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, you had that phantom call on Logan Wilson. Then the same crew is doing the Bengals Chiefs game, and then there was a couple of calls. You said it's the same crew. Okay, well that makes sense now. So I don't think they have it out for them, so to speak, but they will they'll be eager to throw a flag or blow a whistle, and sometimes when they wouldn't have on any other team, and they do it with players or certain players that they do watch for, and that's part of the game too.
One of the really interesting things that came out, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, the NBA didn't do it. I think The Athletic did a survey of NBA players anonymously. And one of the things that they included in that was who are the best officials and who are the worst officials. And the same guy showed up. The same guy who was listed as the best official on one side was like the third worst. So you can see how a lot of this becomes, I don't want to say becomes personal grudges,
Brent,
but the human error, the human aspect comes into it.
If Del and I are playing each other and he makes all these calls in favor of Del, then he's Del's favorite ref and he's my least.
And you're your least favorite, yeah. Had more to do with, I think, their personality on the court and how they interacted with players more than calls. I think most of the time, when you get away from the moment, the players will understand that calls are going to come and go against them. But it's more, oh, this guy, he was a jerk to me last time, or he's...
Okay.
Yep.
That's fair enough. But as Del said, and I've heard Garrick say before, guess what, guys? It's kind of part of the game. The human factor... I thought about that because it's always bugged me. I'm like, yeah, I don't agree. That makes me mad. But when I think about it, guys... Really, if we start getting so VAR on everything, too much takes out the human factor. We might as well just have robots play. It's part of life, and isn't sports an analogy of life? So we know that we get bad calls in life, and you got to keep playing anyway. How do you handle that? Do you let it ruin the rest of your game in life or on the field? Some news and some food for thought. But wrapping up the NHL, couple of things. Kraken, hello. Love it. They're holding their own against the Cup defender, and that's pretty good. Their series is tied 1-1. But boy, the Kraken had a really good start. They were up 2-0. They ended up tying through the second period, and then in the third period, they were able to go down by 1. So still, they're holding their own. That's really exciting and very historical because it is their first appearance as the latest NHL team. And then there was this story. I sent you guys this link. I don't know if you saw it, but the Jets had a player who got 75 stitches after a skate to the face. 75. That alters your face for the rest of your life.
If it's a hockey player, he will wear it like a badge of honor, of course.
Right?
And he was right back out there the next game.
Oh, you got the Stanley Cup in the background there, Garrick.
I do.
Did you ever think how
What?
filthy that thing is after everybody kisses it?
I know. I have to polish it constantly because everybody always wants to touch it, and I just hate that.
Oh, when it gets passed around from team to team every year, it sees a lot of action before it gets back to your house.
Yeah.
If you're concerned about them germs, you might not want to watch Djokovic because he's apparently regrets nothing. He sits in front of these reporters and they're like, don't you regret now that you didn't get vaccinated? Don't you just really
Are you talking about
regret?
Djokovic, the tennis player?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. 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 Oh, okay. I'm not even going to say anything. Let's move on.
Don't you regret it? Shame on. That's the feeling that I get. I don't know if you get, if I'm just pulling it out because of my bias, but that's the feeling I get. Shame on you. Aren't you ashamed of what you did now? See? It's just, will this ever end?
Now, we mentioned people having it out, players having it out for refs, and refs having it out for players. I think the media has it out for him.
Yeah, they kind of do. And he's gotten the raw end of the stick, but he's stayed strong and true to what he believes. So there you go. All right, we're going to go into Dell territory as we talk about the NFL, right? There's some news stories that I want to bring to the forefront. If you guys have some thoughts on the draft coming up, whatever, I want to hear from you. But there's some things happening in the background. We always talk about it every year, and it's almost like a soap opera. It's the NFL soaps. But Jalen Hurts has become the highest paid player in the NFL. Move over Russell Wilson and your 12 bathrooms because Jalen is coming. That's a big deal. And the LA Raiders owner, Mark Davis, is weighing in on the Oakland A's move to Las Vegas. There's no love lost there. Most of that, if I understand right, is because of disputes over their stadium territory and all of that. But it's always confusing to me and not okay when you have these teams that move to another city. It's really tough because that's the one thing that holds fans together. This is my team. This is my city. And now you move it to someplace like Vegas and it's just so weird. Rename it. Don't be the A's anymore. Don't be the Dodgers. Okay, that's long since passed.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, wait a minute.
Although the A's have a long history too.
They do.
I think not all. It seems like half of their 50 years in Oakland they've spent on the verge of moving.
Yeah.
But they've been through different ownership groups. Charlie Finley back in the 70s was always had one foot out of town, even when they were winning the World Series. And there was an ownership group that's previous to this one that was between them that did really well. That was like during the Canseco McGuire days when they were tenders. But man, there is no worse venue from what I hear than that Coliseum right now, Oakland Alameda Coliseum or whatever they call it now. They're talking about possums in the press booth and sewage backing up into the locker rooms. And it's been going on for years. And it seems like they've done nothing either to improve conditions for the players or make it a place that people would want to go. So they've neared their own exit. Now you got 15 people going to games there. So everybody's like, yeah, make a move. If you alienate everybody, what do you think is going to happen?
And
You mean Brent? They've had 25 average recently.
Okay, I'm
Vegas knows
exaggerating.
how to build a stadium. They know how to put on a show. We'll give them that. Then there is the NFLPA's latest data that shows that players have fewer injuries on grass than artificial turf. Del, weigh in on that. You've been following NFL for quite some time now. You're at game after game. What say you?
This doesn't surprise me.
No?
The biggest injury we ever saw, I think, on grass, on real grass, was when Tim Krumrie with the Bengals in that Super Bowl when they had that new turf down, that new sod put in, and everybody who remembers that when Krumrie's leg just snapped in half and it wobbled in the air.
Oh, yeah.
That was on grass, but that was brand new sod that they put down, and it hadn't taken yet. I think if we just let grass be grass and stop trying to be so sophisticated and then plant new sod every time there's a game. I played on grass for years, and I played on AstroTurf, the old AstroTurf, when it felt like I got hit by a truck. When I took somebody down to the turf, you bounced on that stuff. So I didn't like AstroTurf at all. Now the new turf today is okay; it's nice, but there's nothing beats just grass. It does give a little bit, and it is softer, especially when there's mud, and that's part of football.
Oh, and it's fun. Oh, I love watching mud ball. I love it. That's glorious. But it sounds like you're saying that God knew what he was doing. And if God didn't invent fields of artificial turf, then maybe we should just go with what God designed.
Let me just, in defense of artificial turf, I will, first of all, acknowledge the fact that certainly there's going to be more injuries, because if your foot is planted on turf and someone hits your foot, it's not going to move. Whereas if it's on grass, it'll give. But as a weeknight warrior, as an amateur athlete, this new field turf is outstanding. I used to come home muddy, and because it rains a lot in Seattle.
I love the muddy. I love mud ball. Come freaking on. I absolutely love it.
But maybe 200 nights a year, though, Garrick.
But you lose elements of the game if you're playing in slop.
Yeah. Okay. That may be true, but much like we were talking about with the refs, that's part of the fun of it. If you have everything exact, same after same, it's not as exciting. Man, I love watching.
You can stick to the game, though. Then you could play the game.
But I like watching like Supercross. Supercross, for some reason, goes up to Seattle in March. And they play and they ride around their track in March in Seattle. And if every stereotype of Seattle, it's true in March. And it's muddy and it's ridiculous and the drivers hate it, but the crowd loves it because there's mud splashing everywhere. It's part of the excitement, and it keeps it from being the same game day after day. You deal with those different environments. It's fun, and it's like those refs. You can't have it both ways, my friend. Come on.
If you go back to the way it was, which I would love to see, that's going to take some of the sophisticated, did he cross the plane? Back in the day, you used to have to actually be in the end zone to be considered a legitimate touchdown. But I think when you have the mud and the rain and the snow, it takes the great team and the bad team and it makes them equal, which makes for a much better game to watch.
Oh, that's a great point right there. I like that. When we think of in Seattle and then throughout the World Cup, when it comes to the U.S., a lot of stadiums, there's a stadium up in my neck of the woods that has to play both ways. It has to play football, and it's going to have to play World Cup soccer. They're going to have to take out some of that artificial turf, and they're going to have to put in grass. So that's going to be an interesting thing, but they say they can do it. I just think I agree with you. Maybe we're getting so technical that we've lost some of the spontaneity of some of our games. So I want to transition, and I use that term purposefully to
I like you as a lady, Michelle.
to women's sports. So here's something interesting. Then this is in the soccer realm. Women's soccer, the headline says women's soccer is having a moment, except in the boardroom, where UEFA has one token spot for women. But there was one woman who decided that she was going to run for another role. Now, while women's soccer is truly exploding in UEFA, women don't have much of a voice there. And I wanted to talk about how important this is. I'm going to bring up that Bud Light commercial. There's a reason. While people are debating transgender this, transgender that, I want to talk as a woman sports reporter and why I felt that Bud Light commercial was not only a bad move on a communications level, but it was dangerous. Dangerous? You see all the people on Facebook with the marked safe from a beer can. It's not about the beer can. It's about the fact that someone using gender appropriation dresses up like a woman and perpetuates a dangerous stereotype. Oh, look, I have my face on the can, and it's like March Madness, and I guess that has something to do with sports, but I thought it was a crazy month. That stereotype, seriously, that's the stereotype that keeps women from breaking through glass ceilings in sports reporting. It has been a hard-fought battle. And I've come across in hockey, of all things, in junior league hockey, going to a game and having their communications director tell me, I think you have a certain naivete where hockey's concerned. I'm like, really? Is it because I have breasts? Because it isn't because I don't have knowledge. And I didn't mean to be rude there, but really, I find it really difficult. And this is an example of why aren't more women able to be voted in, right? There's a news story that I'll put on the link that shows how much sports broadcasters make. Now, I was hesitant to send that because I didn't want you guys looking at that and going, okay, this is how much Michelle pays.
Yeah.
I want my pay doubled.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. You got it. But it was surprising that the women sportscasters, as good as some of them, are still paid a lot less than men. There are areas where this really does happen, guys. And I know I'm doing a lot of the talking, but I self-identify as a woman, so I figured I would weigh in on that. But really, the last thing I wanted to talk about on this, and there are some other news stories I'll let you weigh in, but Cece Telfler is well-respected sports reporter, and she was speaking out on what she was calling her devastation in the wake of a regular I'm sorry, not Cece Telfler. I totally boffed that name. Cece Telfler is not a sports reporter, is a runner. Forgive me. I just got my names all mixed up as I glanced at my notes. He says he is devastated because Republicans in Congress have passed a sports protection of women proposal. 0 Democrats have weighed in on that, guys. So that really shows how divided we are in this. But I have it's called the Save Women's Sports Bill. And I think it's really interesting how the lines in the sand are drawn.
Right.
All I can say about this really is something that actually happened many years ago, and my sister would kill me if I shared this.
But you're going to do it.
So my sister, I'm going to do this. My sister was a really good 400 runner. She was running in high school I think she got sub 60 once, so it's a pretty good 400 time. She went to the state and in large school competed, and she's my younger sister. And one of those things where you're the big brother is you usually win at everything. And my sister, this was her thing. And so she decided after track season was over, she decided she wanted to challenge me to a 400. And I could tell she thought she had me. And so we went out to the track together, and I don't remember how badly, but I kicked her butt pretty bad. And we finished. And it is so unfair. Just because you're a guy, I can work all season and work and go to state, and you can just step out here like nothing and beat me like that.
Yeah.
That's it right there. That's it right there.
Without training, without any experience as a runner. Yeah. And this Telfer, who's a Jamaican born, was competing at Franklin Pierce University for 2 years as a male and couldn't win anything and decided to transition. It's not right.
It's not fair. I'm feeling like a victim because it's like I'm being attacked or something. We've always said on this program, people's identity issues, whether we agree with them or not, whether whether it's a mental health issue, whether all of that is beside the point when it comes to you're an athlete. Because as an athlete, you may be an adulterer. You may have stolen from the drugstore, stolen a pack of gum from the drugstore. You're a thief. You may have all kinds of things in your background, but when you're on the field, you're a player. And what you identify as, how you vote, what your spiritual background is, all of those things don't take precedence. Your play does. But that doesn't mean you get to displace someone else. There should be a place for transgender athletes. And if you feel like you want to make your own league, make your own league. Del, did you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, that's the ultimate. That is the most common sense approach to this. Is if you want to do this, create your own league and play amongst those who have but then that won't go over well either, because nobody's going to have the clear advantage there. And it doesn't surprise me that vote went against party lines, because Democrats probably looked at that bill and said, female. What in the world's a female? I don't know what one is, so I can't vote for this because I don't know what a woman is. That's why it went along party lines, because Democrats have zero idea of what
a male is. But to your point, there is a World Transplant Games that's going to be taking place, and so they have athletes.
They have transplants now. My plant. I thought my plant was agender.
Right. Okay. They have athletes that have had heart transplants or liver transplants, and they can't compete on the same level. So they have transplant. A world transplant game is going to be taking place. They have a myriad of differing sports that people will be competing in. And you think of the transplant games, or think of the Paralympics. So if you have, and this, there is a real thing of people who identify as amputees. They feel in their head that these legs that I have, they don't belong in my body. I don't feel comfortable with them. They seek to find medical help in getting them amputated so they can compete. But let's just say, as many men who are still fully men, but they just put on lipstick and they identify as women, they get to compete. Why does not someone who has all of their arms and limbs get to compete in the Paralympics? See how the logic and the worldview breaks down, my friends, very quickly. I haven't had a transplant, but I identify as someone who's had a transplant. Why can't they compete? Because they shouldn't be. It breaks down really quickly. One more story, if you don't mind, along these lines, because this one I thought was funny. Annie Agar is the person that was in my mind when I saw the other name. She's have you met her, Del?
Met her, no.
Okay, she's a NFL reporter, and she was invited to ride in a NASCAR vehicle, and it was just real, an Indy car actually, and it was booming fast. It was really excited, and she tweeted afterwards, "This is how Tyreek Hill feels all the time, isn't it? I never felt faster. Thanks so much for having me out. It was an awesome experience." Tyrell afterwards basically tweeted, here's my number, and a drooly face afterwards, which was really inappropriate. Women, let me just tell you, I can't speak for every woman, but as a woman reporter and a woman reporter in sports, I'm not there to be sexy. I'm not there to be drooled over. I'm not there to be hot. I'm there because I love the sport and I love what I do. No more than, it is egregious and unprofessional, and it would have ticked me off. But would I have handled it like Annie? I don't know, because she basically tweeted back after he had a run-in a summer camp or a camp program, rather. She basically said, I don't know, it looked like that student had your number. And I just thought that was classy. Good for you. Good for you. I'm doing a lot of talking here, guys. Bail me out.
Your show.
I'm pretty passionate about this woman thing.
Well, Tyreek Hill doesn't exactly have a sterling reputation either.
Okay, but
the few female reporters that I've met, as far as NFL goes, has been really, they've all been classy and really, and a lot of them are very well protected, as they should be as well, as far as access to them. I've met a few and talked to a few of them, but I've never met her. I've never met Erin Andrews, even though she's been at the games I've covered. She's pretty well protected, especially with her background, with what's happened to her over the years. I think they've all been very classy in it.
And some are, and some, well, yes, they do have that background there. And sometimes you get what you give. You don't want nothing, don't give nothing. However, some women have had to cross that line like they have in Hollywood in order to get a job, because a lot of our work has had to be, I'm going to sit here and be pretty while the big boys talk. And that's just got to stop. We've got to take that stand. And now that we have to contend with you biological men deciding that you can put on lipstick and do what we do.
And there's also been a few occasions where they think they have to prove it too much, to the extent where there's a couple of them that have a reputation for being bullies within the locker room. trying to make sure they get that first story. And so they have to watch that. They have to watch crossing that line of being perceived as pretty and just another pretty face, or as to be somebody that really people don't want to be around because they're
overcompensating.
Yeah, exactly. They're trying to make a point that they're not going to be kicked around.
That's true. I've seen that as well. And then there's women. I don't go into the men's locker room. I just don't. I don't like crossing that line.
A lot of them do.
They do. I've been there before, but I just feel, you know what? I don't want men in my space. I'm not going to go in men's space. I'm not going to be a hypocrite. And if that means I don't get that story, that's perfectly okay. I'm okay with that.
And you probably have a lot, whether they say it or not, they probably appreciate that too.
Yeah, I remember the very first time I was in Boston at the old Boston Garden covering a Celtics game, and this was back when Bird and Parrish and McHale played at the Big Three. And it's my first time to be in a locker room where I ran into a female reporter. But this was back years ago. And I remember that there was Robert Parrish was sitting there in a stall, just got out of the shower, had a towel over his leg. And that was about it. And so this female reporter sitting there just talking to the chief, and very professional and left. I was the one going, it was, yes, and that was my first experience. Now it's very common. Players are very used to it.
But for me, that's my personal choice. I'm not going to say women shouldn't be allowed in there. That's not fair. That's not right. A man shouldn't get the lead on a story simply because he's a male and that's where the stories are. I just don't like it. I don't feel comfortable with it. I have more than I want to see. And I think out of respect for the players, I just want to say that's your space. I'll get the story somehow. And that's part of my faith journey too. Sports an analogy for life. I've got to trust that if I stick to the integrity that I feel comes from my walk with Christ, then God's going to give me the opportunities. I don't have to make them. I don't have to bend my ethics in order to get a story.
Eric?
I was curious, do men reporters go into U.S. women's soccer or basketball, NBA, WNBA games?
Not regularly. That's just not a thing. So apparently you guys don't matter.
I'm just saying that if there is women in men's locker rooms, then there should be an equal standard applied across the board. I'm not saying that I am in favor of it, but I'm just saying.
What I would do in that case would be I would ask the person over the media, hey, I'm going to wait outside. Can you send such and such players out when they're finished?
Yeah.
And that would go over.
Exactly.
Sure.
Two other quick stories as we're running out of time today. Time flies when you're having fun, and I have fun with these guys. Real Madrid and Barcelona are having a war of words of such over Spain's fascist past. They are literally arguing over who's been more fascist. Have you guys heard that story?
No.
Oh my gosh. It's as though, there's this hatred of fascism. And this is another way that politics has wormed its way into the sport. So they're bitter rivals on and off the pitch. But Real Madrid and FC Barcelona have decided that they are going to argue over who was closely related or in bed with, so to speak, France with Francisco Franco, forgive me, during his 36-year rule as a dictator. And it's just another way that things have gotten crazy off the rails. And then finally, U.S. men's national team. They had tied with rival Mexico in their match this week, and I was really hoping for more continued domination of the U.S., but it just didn't happen. Garrick, you want to weigh in?
It is probably one of the world's greatest rivalries currently, especially when it comes to soccer. U.S. men's national team could never beat Mexico 20 years ago. And I shouldn't say never, but it was always Mexico. And the level of the U.S. men's national team has come up so significantly. Then we've had some great victories in the last few years. And Mexico, of course, struggled in the World Cup. And so Mexico really had a chip on their shoulder and something to prove. And there's great footballers, soccer players coming out of Mexico, of course.
It's true.
It always has been a great.
Do you know what's
great
not
place.
great coming out of Mexico? Sorry about it. The fans. They're some of the worst soccer fans on the planet. They're foul. They use racial slurs. They throw frozen water bottles. They throw it's just like they behave horrifically. Sat in some of those matches next to folks that have been more reasonable. It's not all of the fans, and they say because I was the other team. I'm the U.S. team, and they were like, I'm really sorry about that. They've been there. Hey, just leave her alone. I mean, that you have to do that. It's pretty sad. But again, guys, as we wrap up today, it's maybe the state of the world. We've lost the ability to be civil, to have great rivalries, and to cheer and to dislike another team venomously, but still have respect and behave like a human. We've lost that. So it's some more food for thought. Let's go to our final
Full shot.
Brent R. Baker, final shot.
Oh, you would make me go first. So I was on the road for a bit yesterday, which usually means that's usually when I start dialing up all sorts of podcasts. And most people like around the country are probably familiar with Brock Heward from his play-by-play of college football and stuff. But he does a podcast called Above and Beyond, which is about the intersection of faith and sports, which we should have him on here sometime.
Familiar.
That's a good idea.
He did one that just came out. Oh no, it was a year ago. I didn't know it. Anyway, so he did one with an umpire, since we were talking about officiating, Mike Mushlinsky. Just a great interview with the guy. And for those of us in Washington State, he's from Ephrata, Washington, which is right in the middle of the state. And I actually was like literally driving by the town yesterday as I was finding this out. I was like, how weird is that? But it's just cool to hear from some of these different places. You hear about athletes talking about their faith. So for him to be able to have an hour-long discussion about Christ and faith with a major league umpire and he's been good enough to umpire in a World Series. It was pretty cool.
I like it. Okay, let's go with Garrick. We're going to let you go last, Del.
All right. I am giving my final shot to an actual amateur athlete. He was actually visiting this country for the second time. He was in New York before, but he came to the Great Pacific Northwest recently, and I'm trying to pull up a picture for us to be able to see him. But he is actually a rugby player. He's competed at a pretty high level for his age, and now he is playing for his county over in England. And so this young man, I'm going to pull up the picture here if I'm able to figure out how to do that technologically. But I have to show you the picture first so that you can guess his age. Okay. Let's share the screen. So my final shot this week goes to Jack Buono Lerner. Can you guys see that?
Yes, we can.
How old do you think Jack is? Whoops.
I can't wait. I know, so I'm not playing this game.
You kind of let the cat out of the bag on this.
Anyway, he is 16 years old. He has. I could never grow a beard the way that he can. But anyway, we went over to Central Washington University last week to watch the Wildcats unfortunately lose to the BYU Cougars in the quarterfinals of the NCAA Division I rugby. But he met with the coach, and so there's a possibility that he might come out here to play. But he is just an amazing young man. At 16, I took him out on the football pitch as well, the soccer field, and he's got some great skill as a soccer player as well.
That's pretty awesome.
But anyway, just a great young man.
And I got to meet him as he went to the NHL game.
That's
so
right.
That was pretty cool. All right.
Yeah, so my final shot goes to Jack, and it was great having you and your mom here visiting us.
Thanks. Let's go to Del.
I took a easy way out, but it is good. Final shot goes to a man that I have talked to him, but haven't met him really, but watched him die last year. But DeMar Hamlin is cleared to play by his physicians in the NFL.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So,
That's a good final shot. My final shot goes to Brad Holmes. So he is a manager with the Detroit Lions. He wore a shirt with the Lions logo, and it said "Support women and girls in sports." So it's a dual praise, because I not only wanted to praise him, but I wanted to praise one woman who is speaking out for women in sports, and that's Riley Gaines. So atta girl. Atta girl. She's coming under fire, but she's not afraid to stand up for fellow women.
I don't understand how she comes under fire. It's ludicrous.
Right?
And this coach, he'll probably get canceled because he's standing up for women. All right, that's enough.
And that's
Well,
that's
I don't know.
the
I don't know if as long as the Lions continue their upward trend, I think Holmes is safe.
Well, there you go. That's funny. So I guess that's where it comes down to. It's an old song that I remember singing at church camp. Though none go with me, I still will follow. Though none go with me, I still will follow. So think about that. Are you willing to be canceled for what's right? Are you willing to talk about it? Are you willing to take a stand? Because it's time in history. We really need to do that. So food for thought. Again, it's been a feast for food for thought today. And guys, I have loved supping with you. So thank you so much. God bless you. Like us, share us, and enjoy the picnic. God bless.
For more fun, go to mymichellelive.com.